On the 1st of April 2019, Ronnie O'Sullivan tweeted that Efren Reyes was the only player to ever out-hustle him on a snooker table. So I decided to have a look into what exactly happened when those two geniuses met. And it probably didn't go down the way you imagine it did. So let's set the context first. Back in December 1991, the Amateur World Championship of Snooker was being held in Thailand, and both Efren Reyes and Ronnie O'Sullivan were taking part in the tournament. For those who are not familiar with the Amateur World Championship of Snooker, well, it's pretty simple. It's for amateurs. That means there isn't a single professional snooker player there. So usually it's filled with either very young promising talents or adults that haven't been good enough to get on the pro tour yet. In 1991, Efren Reyes was 37 years old and still well within the prime of his game. Since 1987, the Philippines government had asked him to represent the country in several international snooker tournaments, like the Southeast Asia Games for instance. So that wasn't his first rodeo. He had played a few snooker tournaments before that. But at the end of the day, his main focus obviously and very clearly was not on snooker. His priority was still pool during that period of time. On the other hand, in December 1991, Ronnie O'Sullivan celebrated his 16th birthday during the week of that tournament. Although very young, he was already a force to reckon with on a snooker table. I mean, the very next year, in 1992, he was already good enough to turn pro, and in his second season as a pro in 1993, he went on to win one of the three most prestigious snooker tournaments, the UK Championship. So in 1991, he was an extremely talented and promising young amateur snooker player. So while they were both in Bangkok for this tournament, Efren Reyes, who never misses an opportunity to make money, started to play some money games against a snooker player from Hong Kong. And because Efren isn't a snooker player, he was given a 5 points handicap. He went on to beat that unknown amateur player from Hong Kong. Then, Ronnie O'Sullivan walked in and asked to play. And even though Ronnie was just a kid, Efren had probably already heard of him because he asked for a massive 30 points handicap. Ronnie O'Sullivan didn't want to give 30 points, but for some reason he did agree on 25 points, which sounds very risky to me. For those who are not familiar with snooker, if I simplify the game, there are basically 147 points available on the table. So mathematically, you need to score 74 points to win a frame. But at the amateur level, more often than not, 60 or 65 points is enough to win a frame. So giving 25 points to a great cueist like Efren Reyes, who has a high break of 132, really doesn't sound like a good idea to me. He basically is starting each frame already having 40% of the points he needs to collect. It's a massive handicap. So it's with no surprise that Efren won all 4 frames they played. What did surprise me is the fact that after losing those 4 frames in snooker, Ronnie O'Sullivan asked to play 4 more frames, but in 9 ball this time, and I'm sure Efren Reyes accepted with a big smile on his face. There wasn't any pool tables around though, so they decided to play 7 ball instead, on a snooker table. They used the snooker ball's value to define the order of 1 to 7. So the red was the 1 ball because it's worth 1 point in snooker, and the black was the 7 ball because it's worth 7 points in snooker. And once again, Ronnie O'Sullivan agreed to give a very risky handicap to Efren. Basically, the deal was that Efren can put either the 4 or the 7 ball to win, while Ronnie can only win by putting the 7. That is another massive handicap. It's just simply ridiculous in my opinion. So once again, it's not that surprising that Efren went on to win all 4 frames. Everything I just said is based on Efren's recollection, but his memory seems a little bit unreliable. He said he couldn't remember whether they were playing for $500 or 500 baht a frame. Then he also said he thinks he made $6,000 in total from Ronnie, but the math doesn't add up, because 8 frames at $500 a frame, that should be $4,000 in total. So it looks like his memory can't really be trusted in terms of how many frames they played, or how much they played per frame, or maybe even both. And on a side note, if it turns out that they were actually playing for 500 baht a frame and not $500, then we are talking about 4,000 or 6,000 baht in total, which is worth around $200 in total. So that could be a very different story. That would mean they were basically playing for fun because 200 bucks is nothing to them. Hopefully one day Ronnie O'Sullivan can share his version of the story and confirm or invalidate some of Efren Reyes' claims. But at this point, that's basically all we know about what happened on that day. I think the key facts here are that Ronnie was only a 16 years old amateur player at the time, and most importantly, that the handicap given to Efren in both snooker and 7-ball was way too much for such a brilliant purist in his prime. And that's probably why Ronnie O'Sullivan said he got out-hustled and not outplayed.